on this computer, so I'm recording. This is Harry Watt, North Carolina State University Wood Products Extension. We're videoing today with Andrew Easton of Bell's Machining, a firewood processor company out of Perth, Ontario. They make large-sized processors. And welcome, Andrew.
Thanks for having me, Harry. I really appreciate the conversation here today. The last one we had was great. So
there you go. Well, we jumped topics, and golly, you can handle two topics, so you get to come back.
Well, there you go. I'm pretty diverse, I guess.
Well, we're going to talk about larger processors and kind of where would you think the break is between smaller machines and larger machines?
Honestly, it's going to be how much capital you have to spend and what you're actually looking to do. There's nothing wrong with a smaller processor. We build bar saws and they work really well. When you get into a circular saw, you're going to be into a production machine. The maintenance is a lot less, cost of operating is a lot less. The initial outlay on the money is more, but the final product at the end is a lot more production, a lot more consistent production than you would typically see with a bar saw. Now that would go for any bar saw, any circular saw, whether it be ours or somebody else's.
So it's really the breaking point you think between smaller and larger machines is whether it's a chain doing the sawing or a circle saw.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like when you get into and it kind of depends on, again, the volume level, but I would say that once you get into a circular saw, you're going to be into a larger machine. Like there are mid-sized machines. We build a handful of mid-sized bar saw machines, and there's quite a few of them on the market too that are really well-built machines. And typically what we find with those machines is they're kind of a stepping stone for a fella to get up into a bigger machine. So
right. Well, it sounds like it's, output. We chase more horsepower, bigger saws, better feeding systems as we're trying to ramp up our production and our sales.
That's exactly it. And the biggest thing for most firewood guys is consistency, whether it's production or the product coming at the back of it. When you get onto that scale and you're spending that kind of money, you need to make sure that it's very consistent. And that's our goal here in the future, is to build machines that are incredibly consistent or incredibly reliable. So, well,
the story on Bell's is that you're a recent buyer of the company. Is that correct?
Yeah. I bought it about 3 or 4 months ago. Prior to that, my dad had owned it. I started Easton made, and I've got to a point where I was actually able to buy Dad out. I bought the company. My background is actually in fire processors. I designed a lot of the electrical systems and hydraulic systems that they're still using on the processors today, actually. So.
Well, very good. So you got a deep background on them. So when you look at large processors, tell us about the power plant options for large processors.
For us, we're going to be offering 2 different options in the future. We're going to be offering a 74 horsepower Kubota and a 115, and those seem to be the 2 engines that fit the bill best for us. The 74 is nice because you don't need the exhaust fluid or anything with it, so you get away from that. Where when you get a 115, you're going to need exhaust fluid and stuff on it. So that would be the biggest difference in the power plants. When you go up into the bigger engine, it's a lot more forgiving. It's the recover on the saw and everything is significantly faster. We're able to turn the pumps up a lot higher and run a lot more throughput through it.
Okay. Well, I got a question about pumps, since you're knowledgeable on pumps. I hear people talking about a 1-stage pump and a two-stage pumps. Can you give us a little more information on that?
Yeah, typically what'll happen with them with a 1-stage and a 2-stage pump is most, especially small engines, don't have enough horsepower to turn a significant enough amount of flow that the splitter wouldn't be slow. So in that instance, that's where you would get into a 2-stage pump, and it literally just takes one pump out of the equation. There's 2 pumps in there, and then it recycles the oil back into the return of the other side. So you're essentially running on one pump when it kicks down. With the processors, one thing that we are going to be doing in the future is actually running piston pumps on them. So most equipment now, like you see bunkers and a lot of that big equipment, they've been running piston pumps for years. It's something fairly new for processors. I think we'd be one of the only companies that are actually running a piston pump on them now. And the nice thing about it is it's infinitely variable. It's not a two-stage pump on or off, where a piston pump it will move, so it'll vary the pump flow depending on the load on the engine. So it's just a very sophisticated system.
Okay. Well, let's just, when we think of processors, the first step is some kind of a log deck. And all the processors pretty much that I know about are built on trailers and go up and down the road. So you're limited on how much of a log deck you can have. So what should you do if you're running a big processor?
Typically, you need to have best operation would be to have two people run. You'd have one person loading the logs and then one person actually running the process, because these big processors will chew through the wood that fast, and you would need to have somebody moving wood to it to make it efficient. The amount of money you're going to pay the one guy to move the wood, you're going to make that back pretty quick in production. And in terms of log decks, we've seen it done where we've done longer log decks and stuff on them. I'm going to try and get away from doing some of that stuff just to keep kind of standardized stuff, but that seems to be the best scenario for us, having somebody else loading the machine, be a wheel loader or a skid steer or a log truck, something along those lines.
Well, what I see a lot of times is as people get established, they will buy log deck add-ons. For example, it's a self-contained deck that matches up to what they have. So instead of putting 5 or 6 logs, they may put 20 or 30 logs on.
Yeah, and that works really, really well. You can get all the logs loaded up onto it really well, and it essentially runs the same as a sawmill in that respect. Even most of the log decks on the market right now are running the exact same chain, the exact same configurations as a log deck in a sawmill. So it's a pretty tried and true system. So,
well, it adds what I call slop in the system, so the guy doesn't have to. He can go do something else for a while who's running the loader. But then once you come off the deck, you've got to get the log up to the saw, and there's all kinds of ways to do it based on the manufacturers. Everybody has their own system that they like. Tell us what you think of all the different systems.
There's a lot of them out there that are really, really great, and there's a lot of different perspectives on it. Like the shuttle grapples on the multi-deck seem to work really, really awesome. They standed the log up really nice on the saw, and some companies will run a flat bar on them. We run like a big aggressive tooth on it. So if there's any piece of wood on it, it works really well for that. And I don't know if when you go from one to the other, there's obviously pros and cons to both of them. We prefer the in-feed chain just because it's a continuous feed. Like, you're always advancing the log forward. There's no forward and back, and there's no other secondary step to it. So that's why we do it that way. But like I said, I don't think there's any right or wrong to them. The biggest thing is you need to have a positive drive going into the saw. If you have any chance of slippage, it's going to slip. So you have to make sure there's a positive drive going into the saw, especially for consistent production.
Right, and the next thing, I guess, is we have to have some kind of a clamp system to hold the log down when we saw, just to improve the sawing ability.
Yeah, and again, there's various different ways of doing it. Like, there's some that are linked together that seem to work really good. The advantage of that is that if you're into smaller wood, you don't need a full stroke to saw, so that's really handy. And then there's the grapples that hold on them. There's I've seen companies that have rollers on them. There's lots and lots of different ways of doing it. With the way that ours is set up, the saw has to come right out of the cut before the grab arm will move, and then same thing going down. The grab arm has to come down before the saw will move. And we do that just for the sake of safety, because when you do that, it eliminates that big circular saw being able to catch a block and throw it on you. It really it definitely eliminates a lot of that part of it. So, which these machines will do if you're not careful with them, they will throw a block of wood.
Yeah, well, safety is a big deal. Even if you're in a cab, we don't want to see flying wood around. So the next step,
no, not a bit.
We go up, and there's different ways of doing. Some people have a hard stop, and other people would just have a loose chain or a piece of plastic that hangs down. I guess it's up to whoever makes it what they want to do.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, we've always gone for the positive stop. Like, there's actually a cylinder on there that retracts out of the way and it's part of the sawing process. When you do it that way, it's a positive stop. You run the wood into it, and you know that you're at whatever length you want. And there's fine adjustment on it too, where you can measure from your blade back to the plate and make sure that it's consistently right on. And it takes a lot of in terms of performance, it helps it a lot because you're not waiting for a chain or a flag to come back and settle down. It's very, very consistent and very, very simple to run. You're not going to overshoot it or nothing along those lines. So,
Well, I had one firewood processor tell me that it's really important to save seconds on your cycle, and that's what he does in his place. Is you got to get the cycle time down. Whether you do a block every 6 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever that number is, it's really important.
yeah, absolutely it is. And the big thing with it is there's a lot of different ways to achieve it. Like, a lot of people seem to think the splitter cycle is the main part of that. But there's so many more aspects to that than just the speed of the splitter cylinder. Like, the log stop's a good example of it. The infeed's a good example of it. What we try to do is have a continuous feed all the time. That's very, very consistent. And with the new machines that we're building when we switch to the Easton made design, that's going to be my entire goal with it, is to have an incredibly smooth, incredibly consistent machine.
Well, what about the wedges? It seems like everybody's got an opinion on wedges. And the bigger machines, what sort of range of wedges do we see?
You'll see anything from an 8, 12, 16 ways as big as we do. We've done custom wedges for guys up 20 ways and 24 ways. Typically, when you get up over 16 ways, you're starting to beat a dead horse there. When you get into that really big one, you're just asking for trouble. Stuff's going to plug up, and it's fine if you're running saw logs through the machine and running really clean stuff through it. But we both know that's not what firewood is. Firewood's the stuff that's not saw logs. It's too big for pulp, right? So,
Well, a lot of our logs we get in the firewood business are the upper logs in a tree, and like you say, it's not profitable to saw them for lumber. So guess who gets them? The firewood guy or gal.
That's exactly it. Yeah, 100%.
So it seems to me that especially with the big machine, you want a movable wedge to sort of match that wedge with the log.
That's exactly it. And the way the wedge are set up on the new Easton made machines, when we start building them, you're going to be able to swap a wedge out in a matter of a couple of seconds. Like, if you have a skid loader there or whatever, it should take seconds to change a wedge. So typically, what I envision people doing with it is sorting their wood a little bit more per diameter. So then one pass, you're getting a consistent quality firewood product out the end of the machine.
So you'd say, like, I might run this morning, on an 8-way wedge, and then in the afternoon I might switch to something else.
That's exactly. You might switch to your 12-way or your 16-way, and it should be pretty quick and easy to do that and manipulate that. So,
well, minimizing resplits is a big deal. What advice do you have on that?
Typically, we will. I try to tell guys at 20 inches, like, even though the machines will do 26 inches, like the 60C will do a big piece of wood. Once you get over that 20-inch mark, you're going to be starting to get some big wood. And what we're going to try and do with the Easton made machines is limit the amount of travel that you have on the wedge, and then that way you're going to have 2 bigger pieces on the top of the wedge that should be a lot easier to identify whether they go out the conveyor or whether you can actually toss them back into the splitter while you're running it. That seems to be the best example, in my opinion, to do it. Like I said, I've seen bigger wedges before, but they're a very tricky thing to work with and not plug up, and especially for the customer to have a consistent, reliable machine too. So.
Well, I got a question. When it comes to operating a machine, as you get into bigger machines, you end up with some things like joysticks and foot pedals and all this stuff. What about the learning curve? How do you train a new operator?
Well, that's a tricky thing, and that's the thing that we try to explain to people too. Is you're not typically you're not going to hire a guy off the street to run this like you would with a bulldozer and excavator, a guy that has a lot of experience with running it. the biggest thing is trying to take it slow and learn the machine. And if you have any questions, to give us a call. That's what we're here for, is to help you learn the machine and help you get as much production out of it as possible with a minimal amount of downtime. With our machines, they're probably the simpler control on the system. Everything is actually run on one joystick. The whole thing is a splitter, the log decks, everything's on one handle, and it's very intuitive and easy to follow. So it's in terms of the learning curve on what we build, it's fairly minimal for most guys. It'd be quite similar to a skid steer or another piece of equipment along those lines. So,
well, one of the things I noticed when I watch people running processors is jams. And
yep.
the worst one I ever saw, it took the guy 2 hours to get it unjammed, and I had to help him do it. I just he spent an hour on it before he called his supervisor. Supervisor couldn't get it undone, and after 2 hours, I'd had enough. I was filming this. It was late in the day. I was wanting to go home, and I just said, "I'll get this out." And you got any good advice for avoiding splits? I mean, jams?
Well, again, that's something we're really working on our end. So some of the machines on the market, bells included, when you have the cab and the splitter chamber together, there's no room to get in a splitter chamber. So it's almost impossible, really. Like, it's very difficult. So what we've done is we've changed the machine to an offset design. So in the event that happens, everything's out in the open. So it should be far easier to accommodate and alleviate any kind of an issue like that. Because again, it's something that's going to happen. It doesn't matter. It's the nature of the beast. Especially if you're running that many logs through it, you can't expect every one of them to be absolutely perfect. The other thing that we've done too with them is we've put a live log repositioning system in them. So what happens is when the log rolls into the splitting area in front of the pusher, you can actually roll the log and manipulate it to whichever configuration you want, whether the knot stop or whatever. So that'll help out a lot. Where previous machines, like older machines on the market, when the wood drops into the chamber, that's where it's going to get split. So with this new system, you should be able to turn a knot to the top and run it through and essentially make nicer firewood and alleviate any of those issues you may possibly have.
Okay, just one more thing on equipment is conveyors and moving the wood out. Certainly, you cannot run a big machine unless you got a conveyor, right?
You have to have a conveyor on there. There's any other way you would ever possibly do it. You've got to have a conveyor there, and it's got to be a good conveyor. I know lots of guys that have had really good luck with different types of conveyors, but typically you want to have something that's a purpose-built conveyor for that particular machine. It just is going to save an awful lot of stress, an awful lot of downtime for you. And again, there's lots of different ways of doing them too. And I don't know if there's right or wrong to it on that respect. Again, everybody's got a different opinion of how it should be done and what's best. We use a chain conveyor. The reason we like a chain conveyor is because it's a positive drive. It doesn't matter the weather, whether it's raining, snowing, hot, cold. It's always going to drive. It doesn't matter. So that's the system that we've chose to go with.
Well, anybody that's in the processing business doesn't make one model. And what I thought is I picked out off your website some of yours and just use these as an example. Other people have a similar progression. And it's really smart when the number of the machine gets bigger when the machine gets bigger, right? So the 100 is smaller than the 200 and the 300 and all that. So let's just take a quick look at your machine lineup here just to see what's typical in the industry as you go from smaller to bigger.
Yeah, so like this one here is the Bell's 1000 processor under the Easton brand. It's going to be called an 18 MB, so it's going to be an 18-inch diameter log with a manual bar saw. So when we say manual bar saw, we're referring to no electronics on it. So this will have standard lever controls, hydraulic valves like you would typically see on a machine.
Okay, well, let's look at the next stepping up a little bit.
So you're going to be getting into some bigger horsepower here. The 18 MB or the 1000 series is a gas engine, a 40 horse gas engine on it. This is going to be the 22 MB. Again, manual bar saw, manual controls on it, but it's going to be powered by a 74 horsepower Kubota engine. So there's going to be lots and lots of horsepower there to run that bar saw. That seems to be the name of the game with these bar saws. The more horsepower you can put to them, the better they're going to cut. And it's a pretty when we got looking at these things and pricing out the engines, what I found is it wasn't a big jump to go to from like a 67 horse or a 50 horse up to the 74. The biggest difference in it is the torque curve on it. The torque curve on these 74s is almost 150, 170 foot-pounds of torque higher than a comparable 67. So that's going to be the critical part of that. You're going to have a lot more staying power there with it. Again, this would be the 22 MB and manual bar saws, manual control on it.
Okay, well, let's go to another bigger.
And that would be the 3000 series. And it's going to be referred to as a 22 EB. So this one here is going to have electronic control on it, the same as our 48C and our 60C. It'll have the same electronic joystick control on it. So ease of use should be significantly better with this machine. Generally the same design as a 22 MB. Big horsepower bar saw. It should work really well when we're done with it here.
There you go. And let's take a look at this guy.
That'll be the 48C. That'll be the first one that the cabs come standard on it. All the new cabs will come with heat and AC. You're still going to be running that 74 horsepower engine on it, but the biggest advantage of this is you're going to have that 48-inch circular saw on it. So it's going to cut significantly better and more consistently. They're typically not, I would say, in a 10 or 12-inch piece of wood, a bar saw and a circular saw of this size cuts about the same speed. The biggest difference is the maintenance. That circular saw will not slow down. It doesn't matter what dirt you hit. It's always going to be consistent. Where the bar saw is obviously still a chainsaw. If you hit dirt, you're going to be sharpening chains. These are really, really low maintenance. You could retooth the whole thing for $300 or $400. You change all the teeth on, and they'll last an incredibly long time. As long as you don't hit something significant like a stone or a piece of steel, these circular saws are awesome.
Yeah. Now, just take while we got this on the looking at your conveyor. At the end, you've got a simple cleaning device for the firewood.
That's exactly it. So the firewood will come off the conveyor and onto the grizzly separator there, and then a lot of the chips and debris will fall off and go onto the pan. You can rake them into a bucket and keep a lot of that debris out of your pile. You get that small debris in there, and it's just like a sponge. It kind of holds the water in there and prevents it from drying as well as what it should.
It also makes the kiln drying more difficult if it's in there. It blocks the airflow, and it's got moisture too.
Yeah.
And well, here we go. This is the 8000, I believe.
Yeah, the 8000 is going to be referred to now as the 60C, so it'll be 60-inch circular saw on it, 115 horsepower engine on it, way heavier frame on it. This machine's designed to do that big wood, that stuff that's that 25, 26-inch diameter wood. It's designed to cut it and split it easily and break it down. Like I said, once you get over that 20-inch mark, you're still going to find that you're going to be getting bigger pieces that are likely going to get resplit. The nice thing about the new design that we're doing, if you get into something that's larger like that you may want to run through a manual splitter, the one log cradle will come out of the way, and you can literally block wood off onto the ground or into a separate conveyor, which is really nice.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. That's a problem for everybody. Like say, here's one of your smaller conveyors. It's the 24, I believe.
Yeah. So this is the STK24. This is from the Easton made line. This is what we're going to be running on the processors. A few things are a little bit different on the Grizzly's, a little bit different on the Ended, but it's a little easier to set up, a little easier to for us to build.
Right. And power options, it looks like some of these have their own engine, and others work off of the processor hydraulics.
That's exactly it, and we can do it either or for guys. Like this will be designed to run behind one of our log splitters. We can also this is what we're going to be selling with the processors too. So it'll just be a matter of quick couplers into the lines off the conveyor,
Okay.
from the machine to the conveyor forward.
All right. Well, I'm going to stop sharing that. You had something, you had a new model you wanted to show us, had some innovations. You want to do that?
Yeah, we can do that. So like what we're doing with bells is we're going to be changing them to the Easton made brand, and when we do that, we're going to reconfigure them. Instead of having an inline design, we're going to have an offset design. That's again a matter of opinion. I always have been more partial to them. I'll show you what we got here. Right there. So that is what the new processors will essentially look like. The nice part, there's a couple of really nice features on here. Like this is actually going to be an Easton made splitter in here. So you're going to have the quick change wedge and all that stuff. The live deck legs are as long as we could possibly make them. From this one to this one, you're about 40 inches. 40 inches from here to there. Overall span on that one is going to be 8 feet. And then from here to here, you're going to be about 14 feet. So we should almost be able to put every size of wood that a person would want on the one configuration here. You can see that's that positive stop we were talking about. And this is these are the rollers I was speaking of. So when you have a block wood roll in here, if you want to roll that around to manipulate your piece of wood to go through your wedge, you can easily do that. And then this whole side of the machine, this whole log crate will actually pivot out of the way. So when you block a piece of wood, it will block onto the tray and run off the side. So that's going to be really handy for either stuff that's really oversized or the short offcuts. You'll be able to get rid of them instead of running them into your pile. So that's a really, really huge advantage to that. And with this machine too, we've got some pretty cool technology with it. It's all going to be fly-by-wire, which is really nice. So we're going to be able to run proportional controls and piston pumps, and it's going to be the goal with this machine or this configuration is to make this as smooth as possible, as smooth and as reliable as we possibly can.
Okay. Well, Andrew, you can unshare us here. Appreciate you showing that, you're trying to put some innovations into the Bell's product line, and you're using things you learned with Easton made splitters. And with that, I think we're done, unless you've got anything else you want to add. The goal here is to help the firewood processors make money. So if you got any final thoughts, we'd appreciate hearing them.
I don't think there's a whole lot, honestly, Harry. It doesn't matter which. I don't think it really matters which machine people are buying. There's lots and lots of great products out there, and it's really great because of the guys that are in this industry are all really competitive guys, and at the end of the day, it's the client, as the customers, the firewood producers that are going to benefit from it, because everybody's always challenging each other and pushing the envelope, which is really, really great that we have a community and a great bunch of guys to do that with. So,
all right. Well, thank you very much, Andrew Easton with Bell's Machining, firewood processor, Perth, Ontario. Remember, next year we're going to be up in Wisconsin and bring a machine and let's split some wood.
We'll do our best to make her there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you helping us out.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Right. Bye-bye.